So the next one is NVivo. So we're gonna do, so let me give you an overview of NVivo. I've already given you, but just, visual representation, right? So imagine that you have interview participants, right? You have transcribed the interview, right? You have them everything on the document. So what you do is you upload that information into NVivo, you upload all the files, right? You clean the data first, right? I'm going to show you how a clean data should look like, right? And then you create cases, right? So cases are like files for each participant, right? It's quite similar to, let's say you have gotten an admission in a college or university, right? So when you go to admission office, they have cases or they have files for each person. So imagine that you have uploaded all the information, participant transcript in the system. The system, you can use the system to create files for each participant so that it's just like when you open the file, you have participant transcripts, their demographics, right? And any other information or the themes that are connected to participants. Everything is in each person's file, right? So you create containers. So NVivo, I give you the chance to create containers. So containers, we call it code or node, right? Now, because the current software, they made it in code. So code, as I said, code is like a label that represents significant information you have identified. But in this software, we go further and define code as containers that you create so that you can drop the significant information into those containers, right? So if this container is about maybe you are working on how people, strategies people use to overcome stress, right? And one of the ways people overcome stress is engaging in meditation. So the theme or the code will be engaging in meditation. So what do you have to do? You create a container called engaging in meditation, and then the place that the person describe what they did in relation to meditation, you select that information and drop it into that container, right? You could also run some analysis to get a visual representation, right? So you can do word frequency. So word frequency gives you the kinds of words participants use and how many times, right? So we assume that if a participant are using a specific word many times, this means that it's important. You have to just pay attention to that information. You can also search a particular word and see the connection, how the word was also used within a sentence or a paragraph. You can also create code under each of the research questions, and we're going to talk about that. So these are the activities that we may do today. And then output, you can create code book. So code book normally contains the code that you develop and also the descriptions and sometimes the frequencies in terms of how many times a significant information is dropped into that code, right? You can also have them in Excel spreadsheet. You can export that information. You can create word cloud if you run word frequency. You can also create word tree if you want run word search. So these are the things that we might go through. And as I'm going to, if you have any question, you can type and then Grace will be helpful for us to let me know so that I'll be able to address all your questions for you. So as you can see here, the first step is to do data preparation. How do you do that? You just make sure that you assign numbers or IDs to participants. So in this example, I have 5 participants and I ID them P1, P2, P3. Everybody, each transcript has its own document, right? You can come up with any kind of ID. The most important thing is that you make sure that participant information, identifiable information is not in the transcript, like their name, like their maybe anything that you think if you make them available, people will know who you are talking to, right? So you have to be very careful. Make sure that you are protecting participants, right? they gave you the opportunity and they gave you all the information that you need. So your role here is to protect them, right? Sometimes just providing their age or their profession, somebody may know them, right? Not only their name. So you have to be very careful, especially when you are dealing with a small group of people where they can easily be identified. If even you say the location or the city, people will know who you are talking about. So always ask yourself, am I providing information to expose participants? What can I do to protect my participants, right? So after you've addressed all these issues, then you have your transcript, right? And also, if you plan to transfer your demographic information into NVivo, you have to have a table. You can do it in Excel, right? So you can see that I have here participant ID, P1, P2, their age, their gender. I'm going to open it. I just want you to see what needs to be done first, and then we go through the process. So after data preparation, you have to assign labels to your research questions, right? Why do you have to assign labels to a research question? You want to create containers for the research questions, right? Because this is what you're going to do. When you identify significant information and you think that it belongs to one of the research questions, let's assume that this significant information will address research question 1. You develop a code or a container, right? Where are you going to put that container? You have to put it under research question 1. So this means that you should have a huge container called maybe based on the research question, right? So you have a huge container. Then when you get small containers, right, then you'll be able to put them under their respective research question, right? So you create a container. So based on this research question, okay, the data that we're going to use is data about burnout among primary healthcare professionals or physicians, right? So we asked them, and this one is not, this data was developed for only demonstration. It's not based on like research, right? So you have to be very careful using this data. So just for demonstration. So based on the topic, we wanted to find out from participants, what are the causes of burnout, right? And what can be done to reduce burnout in the workplace, right? Or what kind of strategies do they use to reduce burnout? So I have 2 research questions here. And you can see that I have labels for the research question. Those are burnout causes for the first research question and burnout solution for the second research question, right? So we call, in my book, I call it anchor code, because this label, which is burnout causes, is connected to the research question 1, and burnout solution is connected to the research question 2, right? So when you go to NVivo, you create containers for the research question 1 and containers for the research question 2. So think about NVivo places like you create a huge 2 containers for each of the research questions, and then under each you have a small containers which is code right under them. Then we have to determine the coding strategy. I think we talk about 2 coding strategies. Then I'm going to give you the reason why I decided that description focused coding will be the best. I decided description focused coding because when we were interviewing participants, and I'm going to also, yes, is somebody talking? Oh, okay. So let me see whether I can narrow this one down a little bit and go back to the transcript, one of the transcripts. So let me open P1. So let me pull it here. I think that's not this one. Let me pull this one here. So as you can see here, for this example, we ask them direct questions, right? First, we ask them, demographic information, right? And we ask them about how they became interested in medicine, and we ask them about what are the experience of burnout. So you see how we ask them direct questions, right? And we call these questions structured interviews. It's structured because every person was asked the same question in the same order, right? So I am using description focus coding because the answers are there. I don't have to further interpret the participant findings or participant information before I can address my research question. I'm looking for burnout causes. Everything is there. Burnout solutions. Everything is there. So that's why I'm using description focus coding. I would have used interpretation focus coding if the information here is not directly addressing my research question. I have to make sense. This means that the information that we are looking for is hidden in there, right? That you cannot just describe. If I just describe, I might not be able to address the research question I have. So that's why you always have to decide whether you are using description focus coding or interpretation, and you can use both. Some people may start with, maybe they have difficulty interpreting it, right? So they start with, okay, let me describe what participant is telling me first, right? Then after that, let me see what I can make sense. What meaning am I coming up with? So you can combine it, but it's always good to start with one approach, right? And instead of combining, but it's possible for you to do it, especially if you are not sure whether, especially maybe some of the answers will be description, right? But some of the answers you have to interpret it, make sense of it, right? Before you can address, right? One example is if I had a question of what should the hospitals or clinics do to help physicians to overcome burnout? The answers are not directly here. I have to make sense of participant information before I can address this question, because they did not give me that information. But based on the experience of burnout and based on the solution, I can make a recommendation about, okay, based on what he's saying, I think this participant wants the hospitals to provide maybe a program, maybe exercise program or any kind of program to help them to improve their work conditions so that it won't be so stressful, right? Or the clinic have to reduce their workload, right? Based on the information I received. So you see how based on what information you have, you could decide whether you have to use description focus coding or interpretation focus coding. So you see how I've cleaned my data. I don't have participant name. I don't have the hospital or the clinic. I just have their age, their years of experience, the female. So you see that for this information, you cannot say that you know the person. There's no way, right? So you see how I've made cautious effort to protect my participants. Imagine if I've told you about a location or the hospital, and for that hospital, there's only 2 African-American people working there. Although the person, you didn't provide a name, but because of you providing the name of the hospital, some people will find out who you talk to, right? So you are not protecting. And so in this case, I have to take out the ethnicity so that people will not know, or I shouldn't mention the hospital, right? So people will not know the person I spoke to. Okay.